Hi, I'm Troy from Studio 33 Guitar. Thanks for watching. Today's lesson is how to play blues guitar. Now that's a huge topic and we could spend days talking about that. So today's lesson is going to be for the beginner guitar player and how to play blues. Knowing how to play blues is a very important skill to have as a guitar player. When you get together with other musicians just to jam, inevitably somebody is going to say, let's play blues in A, for example. And you might be surprised that the other musicians you're with, more experienced players, will be able to just quickly pick up and take off with that song. And you may be wondering, how do they know what chords to play and when to do the chord changes? Well, the good thing about playing blues is that 99% of the blues songs all use the same chord progression, the same pattern of chords. And once you know what that is, then you'll be able to play basically any blues song out there. And I'll show you some helpful tricks and tips on how to figure out what the chords are. So by the end of this video, you will understand what a basic blues progression is. Normally it's called a 12-bar blues progression. You'll know what the different chords are that are used in the progression. The 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. You'll understand what that means. And you'll be able to quickly figure out what those chords are in any key. I'll also show you a couple of chord tricks that you can do and some strumming patterns that you can do to make your rhythm sound a little bit more bluesy. So let's zoom in on the neck and have a closer look at how we play blues on guitar. At the end of this video, if you find it useful, then please like the video, subscribe to our channel, leave a comment. Also check us out on social media. We're on all the social media sites, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest. We're there. Look for us at Studio 33 Guitar. As I mentioned in the intro, the great thing about blues music is that 99% of it uses the exact same chord progression. So once you know one blues song, you'll be able to play almost all blues songs. Most blues songs follow a formula that's called a 12-bar progression. And what that means is that you're going to play a sequence of chords over 12 bars, and then you're going to repeat that sequence again. So the entire sequence lasts for 12 bars, and then that 12 bars just repeats over and over again as long as you want to keep playing the song. If you've watched some of the other Studio 33 guitar videos, you know we talk a lot about how to count music, and usually we count in groups of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Every time we count to 4, that's 1 bar. So when we're talking about a 12-bar progression, that means that we're going to be playing 12 groups of 4. So our next step is to figure out what the chords are that we're going to play. Now the other great thing about blues is that there's only 3 chords that are typically used. Now those are known as the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. So let's talk about how we figure out what those chords are for different keys. Let's start with the key of C. As you may or may not know, the key of C does not have any sharps or flats in it. So it makes it a little bit easier when we're talking about the different notes in the key. So let's start with the key of C. We're going to start with a C note, which is located right here. So now that is the 8th fret on your low E string. So if you follow the dots, normally you'd have a dot at the 3rd fret, 5th fret, 7th fret, and then go up 1 more, and that will give you a C note. Now we're going to look at how to play a C major scale to start with, so we can figure out how we can determine what the 1 chord, 4 chord, and 5 chord are. So a C major scale, if you've watched some of my other videos, you've probably heard me talk about this before, but let's start with our middle finger on that C note, and then we're going to keep our fingers spread out 1 finger per fret. We're going to play our middle finger, and then our pinky finger, and then go down to the next string. You play your index finger, your middle finger, and then your pinky finger. Move down to the next string. You'll have index finger, ring finger, pinky finger. So that gives us a C major scale. Now the notes that we just played for that scale are C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Now each of those notes we can assign a number. So we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now if we wanted to build chords on each of those notes, we could do that. We could have a C major chord, then we could have a D chord, an E chord, F chord, G chord, etc. Those chords would then keep those same numbers. So for example, the C chord would be the 1 chord because it was the first note, the 1 of the scale. This D would be the 2 chord. Then we would have the 3 chord, and then here's the one we're looking for, the 4th chord and the 5 chord. So if you look at that scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our 1 chord is going to be a C note. Our 4 chord is going to be this one, which again would be C, D, E, F. So our 4 chord would be an F chord. Our 5 chord, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, would be a G. C, D, E, F, G. So then we would simply take those chords and we could play them a couple of different ways. If we wanted to, we could move those down to our standard open chord position and play C, F, and G this way. Or we could play them as bar chords up here. We could either play full bar chords, or we could play them as power chords. So a lot of times for blues guitar, we'll use a power chord shape. Now, if you're not familiar with how to play a power chord, you play the root note and then the note that is a 5th above. Now again, that's based off the major scale. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 5th is always 1 string down, 2 frets up. So if you play those 2 notes together, that gives you what's called a power chord. So I'm only playing those 2 strings, just those 2 notes together. So then you would use the rest of your hand here to rest against these strings to mute those out because you don't want any other notes to be sounding with it. So if we play that as a power chord, that would be our C chord. That would be our 1 chord. Now again, if we want to go to the 4 chord, all we're going to do is move that shape down to the next 2 strings. And now we have our 4 chord. In this case, that's an F. And then our 5 chord, we would move that up 2 frets, use that same shape. That would be our G chord, which is our 5 chord. The great thing about guitar is that that pattern that we've just discovered, 1, 4, 5, would be the same for any key. So right now we're talking about the key of C, but if we wanted to play a blues progression in the key of B, for example, we just have to find our B note on this string, which if this is C, that means B is right beside it. So there's our B note. So our 1, 4, and 5 chords for the key of B are going to be B, and then directly below it, that's an E, and then 2 frets up, that's an F sharp. So again, we could play that power chord shape. There's our B, our E, and our F sharp. If we wanted to play blues in A, we find A on this string, and it's right there. That's on your 5th fret, which is the 2nd dot. There's our A. It's going to be our 1 chord. Our 4 chord is going to be directly below it. That's our D note. And then the 5 chord will be up here. That's an E note. So again, power chord shape. So you can use that technique for finding out the chords for any key. So if someone says, let's play blues in A, you would just find A, and then you would know the 3 chords that you're going to play. If they said the key of G, you would find G, and you'd have that same shape again. That would give you those 3 chords. Now the next part is to figure out what order we put those chords and when we change chords. So let's talk about that now. We'll talk about the 12-bar blues progression. In the intro of this video, I played 12-bar blues progression, in the key of A. So if you go back and you watch that part of the video again, you'll notice that my hand started here at the 5th fret with a power chord shape. Now I also added in the pinky, which I'll show you how to do that in a few minutes, but first let's just look at how the chord changes work. The first 4 bars of a 12-bar blues progression will be the 1 chord. So whatever key you're going to be playing it in, right now we're going to talk about the key of A. So you're going to start with your 1 chord, which will be here. We'll do that as a power chord. And you're going to play that chord for 4 bars. So that means you're going to be counting to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, 4 times before we're going to change chords. So that would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you would switch to the 4 chord. And again, the 4 chord is the one that's directly below it. So that would be right here. And that 4 chord, you're going to play for 2 bars. So you're going to count to 4 twice. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you're going to go back to the 1 chord. And you're going to play that for 2 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to go to the 5 chord. Now the 5 chord is right where your ring finger is right now, so that's a good way to keep track of where you're going next. So now we want to put our index finger where our ring finger is right now. And then of course we want to keep that power chord shape, so we want to move that ring finger down to the next string. So we have 1 bar on the 5 chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to move down to the 4 chord. So we're going to move down 2 frets, keeping that same power chord shape. And we're going to play the 4 chord for 1 bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're back to the 1 chord for 1 bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this is what's called the turnaround. We're going to go back up to the 5 chord for 1 bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to start the entire thing all over again. So what we just went through was 12 bars. So if you count those all out, that would be 12 times that you've counted to 4. So a lot of times being on that 1 chord feels like you're there for a very long time because you stay there for 4 full bars. And that's the only chord that you're on for that long. The other ones are either 2 bars or 1 bar. So a lot of times beginners will find that they are playing the 1 chord, they'll feel like they want to switch to the next chord too soon because it just feels like you're on that 1 chord for a very long time because it's 4 full bars. So don't worry about that. Just make sure you're counting in your head and you know when the actual change is supposed to happen. Because that'll be very important as you're playing with other musicians, because when they make the chord changes, you need to make sure you're making them at the same time. So that's the very basic information on 12-bar progression. Now we want to make it sound a little bit more musical, a little bit more bluesy. So we're going to change the rhythm up a little bit, and we're going to do what's called a shuffle feel. So right now we're counting straight, which means we're counting 1, 2, 3, 4. To do a shuffle feel, we're going to give it a bit of a swing. So we're going to add an and in between each of those beats. So it'll be 1 and 2 and 3 and. But we're going to give it a little bit of a swing, so it's going to feel like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now that would sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now I'm also doing with my strumming hand a little bit of palm muting. So I have other videos that explain how to do palm muting, but basically you're just going to rest this part of your hand on the strings lightly back near the bridge to give you more of a muted sound, a little bit more of a controlled sound. And we're playing with all downstrokes. So it's all 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. We're not playing any upstrokes at this point, just all down. and every beat is getting a strum. So just so you can see my right hand, I'll leave it up here a little bit so you can see what I'm doing there exactly. But we're going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 2 and 3 and 4. So when I change to the A string and I'm doing my power chord shape here, you might notice I also use my index finger just to nudge up against that E string to keep it from ringing. And then that way, with this right hand, you don't have to try and skip that string. You can actually hit it, but it'll be muted out because your index finger is just resting against that string. So you can hear how that shuffle feel gives it more of a bluesy sound. Now to make it a little bit more bluesy, we can add in that pinky like I was doing in the intro. Now that's a little bit of a tricky move for a beginner because you really have to stretch your fingers out. So that's something that's going to take some practice. It's going to take a little bit of time for you to be able to do if you're just starting out. But let me show you how that works. You start again with that power chord shape, and it's important that you're going to use your index finger and ring finger to get that shape. If you play it with your index finger and pinky finger, then you won't have the pinky free to be able to do that move. So you can play it with your ring finger like that. Now the pinky finger comes in on the same string as the ring finger, but 2 frets up. So as you can see, it ends up being a fairly large stretch. So there's a couple of things that you can do to help with this stretch. One thing is the placement of your thumb in behind the neck. You want to make sure that that thumb is basically lined up with where your middle finger is on the back of the neck. And you also don't want to have your thumb too high because it's going to keep your fingers from being able to stretch out. You want your thumb to be low around the middle of the neck, and you want it to be straight up and down. You don't want it to be laying down like this because again, that'll keep your fingers from being able to stretch. You'll be able to get more of a stretch from your fingers if you bring your thumb around. So thumb around the middle of the neck, straight up and down, lined up with the middle finger. And that way it should help you to get more of a stretch. The other thing is you want to make sure that your fingers are playing close to the fret. So if you're playing too far back here, you'll also get more fret buzz, but it's a lot further to stretch now. So move your finger up so that it's closer to the fret. Same thing with the ring finger, and that'll get you a little bit closer with the pinky. So here's how the rhythm works for that pinky finger. We're going to add that pinky finger down on that note on beats 2 and 4. And we're going to leave it down for the and after 2 and 4. So that'll sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So more up to speed would be like this. And then we would do the exact same pattern on the 4 chord. So we drop down to the next strings. We're going to do the same thing. 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And then back to the 1 chord. The 5 chord, same thing. But it's only 1 bar. Then we move down to the 4 chord. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then back to the 1 chord. And then the 5 again for the turnaround. And then we're starting back at 1 again. Now if you're finding that pinky stretch a little bit too much right now, you can move that up the neck where the frets are a little bit closer together to start out. So for example, you could do that in the key of D, starting with your index finger on the 10th fret, and do that same pattern. The frets are a little bit closer together, so it's a little bit easier to reach. Once you're able to do that, you could move that down, let's just say 1 fret. It's a little bit wider, then try another fret and another one. And gradually work your way down the neck until your hand is able to stretch out far enough to do it in some of the lower areas. Well, that concludes the video on how to play blues guitar. I hope that you found this lesson useful. If you did, then please leave a comment down below, like this video, subscribe to our channel, and make sure you visit us on social media and also our website, studio33guitar.com. Thanks for watching.